The sun hung bright and warm over the village, pouring gold over everything it touched. Drums played softly in the distance, mixing with laughter and music as guests filled the open courtyard decorated with colorful fabric and fresh flowers. It was a perfect day, the kind Amina had once only dreamed of. Amina stood at the center of it all, wrapped in a modern wedding dress that blended tradition with elegance. The fabric shimmered gently under the sunlight, and gold beads lined her veil. Her heart beat fast, but it wasn't fear. It was a deep, glowing joy she could hardly contain. She had always been known for her calm nature, for the steady way she handled problems and people. But today, her strength came from love. She was marrying Kato, the man everyone admired. Kind, respectful, gentle, a man who carried himself with quiet confidence. But to Amina, he was more than that. He was someone who listened when others did not. Someone who protected people even when no one asked him to. Someone who made her feel safe. Yet, even as she smiled, something inside her whispered that Kato carried a weight she didn't understand. When she looked at him standing at the altar, dressed in a crisp white outfit with dark gold embroidery, he looked as perfect as ever. But his eyes, they held a shadow she had never seen before. A heaviness. A silence deeper than usual. She tried to push the thought away as her father placed her hand in Kato's. A soft cheer rose from the guests as the ceremony began. The elders stood near them, dressed in deep colors and holding traditional staffs. Their voices rose in blessings, speaking words passed down through generations. The air felt thick with history and culture, each word carrying power. Amina felt her heart swell. She loved this moment. She loved Kato. But even through the joy, she noticed the strange glances. Kato's older brother, Baresa, stood off to the side, tall, strong, and usually full of life. But today he looked almost troubled. His brows were tight, and his eyes didn't shine the way they should on his brother's wedding day. When Kato placed the ring on Amina's finger, Baresa looked away, jaw clenched. And some of the elders, especially the oldest ones, watched with eyes that seemed to hide old secrets. Still, Amina tried to focus on Kato. His hand was warm and steady as he held hers. When the elder announced them husband and wife, he smiled, a soft, gentle smile that made her heart flutter. For a moment, everything felt right. The celebration grew louder as music filled the courtyard. Family danced. Friends cheered. Amina and Kato moved together in the center of the crowd, swaying to the rhythm of drums and flutes. Amina leaned her head against his chest, feeling his heartbeat through the layers of his clothing. But then something strange happened, something small, quick, but impossible to forget. His heartbeat felt layered, as if something beneath it pulsed too. She frowned, thinking maybe it was the music vibrating through his body, or maybe her head was spinning with excitement. She lifted her head slightly, listening again. There was strong, steady, but with a faint echo beneath it. She blinked and laughed softly to herself. I must be imagining things. It was her wedding day after all. Her mind was full, her feelings running high. She brushed the thought aside. Kato looked at her with warmth, but behind his smile, she sensed that heaviness again, something he wished she would never notice. By the time the sun began to set, Amina felt full of love, but also strangely unsettled, as if the air around Kato carried a quiet warning. She squeezed his hand and smiled anyway. This was their beginning. Nothing could break that. But deep inside, a soft whisper lingered. Something about Kato was not what it seemed. A cold wind swept through the compound as Nia stepped in her hut that night. It was small, just a bamboo bed, a clay pot of water, and a thin woven mat. But it was hers. For years she had dreamt of belonging somewhere, anywhere, without feeling like a burden. Now, looking around her small hut, she felt a tiny spark of hope warming her chest. But hope rarely comes without a shadow. Outside, the villagers murmured among themselves. Even with the chief's protection, they watched her with a caution she had felt the moment she stepped into the village at sunset. The cursed orphan, she heard one whisper earlier. She looked at the sky and challenged it. Another replied, and the sky responded. Nia squeezed her eyes shut, pushing away the bitterness. She had been 8 when she shouted at the heavens, shouted at the thunder for taking her parents. She had been just a child, but the story had grown claws as it traveled from village to village. Soon, people were saying the heavens marked her, that strange things happened around her hut wherever she stayed. Now, in this new village, Kimbala, she feared the same story was following her. She tried to distract herself by organizing the few belongings the chief's wife had given her: a blanket, a gourd bowl, and a single lantern. She lit the lantern, and warm orange light spread slowly across the hut. Outside, laughter rose from the nearby fire pit where the villagers gathered before bed. Their voices were lively, almost musical, so different from the empty, heavy silence Nia carried inside. She crawled into her bamboo bed, pulling the blanket over her shoulders. For a moment, she thought she might finally sleep without fear. But then, tap, tap, tap. The sound was soft, but sharp enough to slice through the night. Nia froze. She held her breath, listening closely. Tap, tap, tap. This time it was louder, coming from the side wall of the hut. Her heart thudded in her chest. She forced herself to sit up. Who is there? Her voice trembled, barely leaving her lips. Silence. Then a slow, dragging sound, like fingertips scraping across the bamboo. Nia's hands grew cold. She closed her eyes and whispered, "It's just the wind. Just the wind." But before she finished the sentence, a sudden thump rattled the entire hut. Her lantern flickered violently. Nia's breath hitched. She stared at the corner where shadows gathered. A chill seeped through the room, as if an unseen presence had stepped inside. Nia swallowed hard. She had learned long ago that running never helped. Curses travel with you. Fear lived inside you. If she didn't face it now, it would follow her forever. She stood, forcing her legs to stop shaking, and moved toward the door. Her fingers hovered over the latch. Outside, the laughter of the villagers had died. The compound was silent now, eerily so. Even the crickets had stopped singing. She opened the door slowly. The moon illuminated the compound with a pale, ghostly glow. The air was still, heavy, watching. Then she saw it. A patch of wet soil, right beside her hut. Only her hut. Nowhere else had rain fallen. The rest of the village ground was dry, dusty, as if no drop of water had touched it for days. But the soil near her hut was soaked, dark and shining, as though a heavy rainstorm had poured only on that single spot. Nia stepped out barefoot, her toes touching the cold, wet earth. She bent down and touched the muddy ground with trembling fingers. "Ow," she whispered. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. A sudden rustle came from behind her hut. She straightened, breath shallow. Slowly, she crept to the corner. The wet soil glistened under the moonlight as she approached. Then, a figure stepped out, tall, cloaked in darkness, standing completely still. Nia's throat tightened. She opened her mouth to scream, but nothing came out. The figure stared at her, unmoving. Then, in a voice so low it felt like a vibration in the air, it said, "Why did you call the sky again?" The words pierced her like a spear. She stumbled backward, eyes wide with horror. I didn't," she managed to whisper. But the figure didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Then just as silently as it had appeared, it stepped back into the shadows and vanished, leaving behind only the wet soil and the echo of its question. Nia stood trembling, clutching her chest, realizing with dawning terror. The curse had followed her, and this village would soon learn it. Nia did not sleep for the rest of the night. She sat on a bamboo bed with her blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders, staring at the lantern as it burned lower and lower. The figure's words echoed endlessly in her mind. Why did you call the sky again? Again, as if she had done something recently, as if something had awakened. By sunrise, the wet patch of soil outside had begun drying, but it still looked darker than the surrounding ground. Nia stepped out of her hut cautiously, scanning the area for any sign of the mysterious figure from the night before. There was nothing, no prints, no footprints, nothing out of place except the memory of that deep, unsettling voice. As she walked to the village well to freshen up, she noticed how some of the villagers were already staring at her, whispering, pointing. Their faces held the same look she had seen in so many places before, doubt mixed with fear. But she forced herself to keep her head high. She couldn't afford to run anymore. At the well, the chief's daughter, Amara, greeted her with a warm smile. She was one of the few who had shown kindness the day Nia arrived. Light-hearted, graceful, a girl who carried joy like others carried water pots. "You look tired," Amara said softly. Nia hesitated. Should she say she had seen a phantom-like figure outside her hut? That the sky had rained only on her house? That she felt something ancient tugging at her soul? Instead, she said, "I heard sounds last night." "Animals?" Amara asked. Nia shook her head. "No, something else." Amara's smile faded slightly. A shadow crossed her face, subtle but noticeable. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "This village, it has its own secrets. Strange sounds are not always animals." Nia blinked. "What do you mean?" But before Amara could answer, the chief's son, Kofi, arrived, carrying a basket of maize. He was tall, serious, and always watching the world as though expecting danger to emerge from it. He greeted them with a nod. "You should stay close to the center of the village," Kofi told her. "The outskirts are unpredictable." Nia felt a chill crawl down her spine. "Unpredictable how?" He paused. "You're near the old shrine. Nothing has lived there for years, but some say spirits linger around forgotten places." Amara shot him a sharp look. "Kofi, don't scare her." "I'm not scaring her," he replied, eyes on Nia. "I'm warning her." Before Nia could ask about the shrine, an elderly woman rushed toward them, breathless. "Chief Kato is calling everyone to the square," she announced. The three exchanged glances before heading toward the village center. The gathering. A large crowd had already formed around the chief. His tall frame and commanding presence made him look like a tree that had survived every storm. He raised his hand, silencing the murmurs. "We found something," he said, near the northern edge of the village. Nia felt her stomach tighten. Kofi stepped forward and whispered something into his father's ear. The chief nodded and motioned to a few hunters carrying a wooden box. Amara whispered beside Nia, "What is inside?" The hunters placed the box on the ground and opened the lid. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Inside the box lay a set of old carved stones, each etched with strange symbols. But what made Nia's knees go weak was the stone in the center. It had the same swirling symbol carved on it that she had seen once before, the symbol her mother wore on a necklace when Nia was a child. Nia felt her breath catch. She stepped forward without realizing it. The chief noticed her movement. "You recognize this?" he asked. Every head turned toward her. Fear prickled across her skin. She swallowed. "I've seen it before." Kofi stepped closer. "Where?" "In my mother's belongings," Nia whispered. "When I was young." A wave of murmurs rose among the villagers. "Her mother, is she tied to the old shrine? Is she the reason strange things are happening?" The chief raised his hand to quiet them. Then he looked directly at Nia. "These stones," he said slowly, "were buried beneath a mound of soil that was soaked wet, though there's been no rain in days." Nia's heart stopped. Wet soil, the same as outside her hut. Her head spun. "Chief, where exactly did you find them?" "Not far from your hut," he replied. "At the path leading to the forgotten shrine." The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. She remembered the drenched patch of soil, the tapping sounds, the figure, the words. "Why did you call the sky again?" Nia took a step back. "I didn't call anything. I didn't do anything." But her voice shook, revealing her fear. Kofi studied her face with narrowed eyes. "Your mother? Who was she really?" Nia shook her head. "I don't know." That was the truth. She knew almost nothing about her parents. All lost in the firestorm that night, the sky thundered as though mourning them. The chief gently closed the box. "We need answers, and only one place holds them." Nia already knew what he would say next. "The old shrine," he said. A shiver ran through her. Amara grabbed her hand. "We could go together," she whispered. But Kofi's expression turned grave. "No," he said. "Nia must go." The stones called to her. Nia felt the weight of the entire village settle upon her shoulders. She had run from her past for too long. Now it had risen from the soil, quite literally, and demanded answers. She looked toward the dark edge of the forest where the forgotten shrine lay buried in vines and silence. And she realized her story wasn't beginning in this village. It had been waiting here for her. All along, the forest felt alive the moment Nia stepped beneath its shadow. Tall trees twisted upward like ancient guardians, their leaves whispering secrets carried by the wind. The path toward the forgotten shrine was narrow and uneven, coated in fallen branches and thick vines. Every step felt heavier than the one before. Amara walked beside her despite Kofi's warning, stubborn as always. "You're not going alone. Not into a place this old," she insisted. Kofi walked ahead, spear in hand, moving with quiet caution. Though he had disagreed earlier, he didn't force Amara to turn back. Instead, he stayed alert, as if expecting danger at every turn. Nia's fingers brushed the small pouch tied at her waist. Inside lay the carved stone from the chief's box, the one that matched her mother's necklace from childhood. She had asked to carry it. Something deep inside her needed it close. "Do you feel that?" Amara whispered. Nia nodded. The deeper they went, the thicker the air became. Heavy, dense, almost charged, as if they were walking into a place that had been waiting for them. Waiting for her. The entrance. After nearly an hour, the forest suddenly grew silent. Birds stopped singing. The wind stilled. Kofi raised his hand. "We're here." Before them stood the shrine. It was not large or grand. Instead, it looked like a forgotten memory carved into stone. Small pillars wrapped in thick vines, walls crumbling, the roof half fallen. Moss covered most of it, and the ground around it was darker than the rest of the forest soil. The air carried a coolness that didn't match the warm afternoon. Nia's heart hammered. "This place," she whispered. "It's older than the village," Kofi said. "Older than any chief's rule. Some say it belonged to people who spoke to the sky." Amara squeezed Nia's hand. "Maybe your mother was one of them." The thought hit Nia like lightning. She stumbled backward, breath trembling. No, she was just a woman. A mother. She wasn't. But her voice broke, because deep inside, she felt the truth tugging at her. Her mother had always seemed different. Quiet in some ways, powerful in others. Strange things had happened around Nia, even as a child. Flashes of light, sudden drops of rain, wind that wrapped around her when she cried. Her mother had always told her, "Never call the sky unless you are ready for its answer." It made no sense back then. Now everything was beginning to connect. Inside the shrine, the three of them stepped inside. The interior was dark, lit only by slivers of sunlight breaking through broken stones. Strange patterns were etched along the walls, swirling shapes, curved lines, and symbols nearly identical to the ones on the stones. Nia felt her chest tighten. The air hummed faintly, like a drumbeat far away. Kofi pointed to an altar at the end of the room. "Look!" A shallow bowl, made of dark stone, rested there. Beside it lay old ashes, feathers, and dried leaves, offerings long abandoned. But behind the altar was something else. A shallow, circular carving in the wall. Empty, smooth, waiting. Amara gasped. "Nia, doesn't that look like the shape of your stone?" It did. Exactly. As if the shrine had been carved to hold the very object Nia carried. Her hands trembled as she reached into her pouch. The stone felt warm, too warm, as she pulled it out. A faint glow pulsed under its surface. Kofi stepped back. "Be careful." Nia tried to steady her breathing. Everything in her body screamed that this was the next step. The only step. She stepped forward and pressed the stone into the hollow space. It fit perfectly. The shrine shifted. The ground vibrated. Dust fell from the ceiling. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, rising, vibrating through their bones. Amara grabbed Nia's arm. "What's happening?" Kofi raised his spear, eyes wide and alert. "Move back. Move." A sudden burst of light exploded from the wall. Not blinding, not violent, but powerful, like the first flash of lightning before a storm. When it faded, the carving behind the stone had changed. The wall now displayed a symbol, a swirling shape surrounded by smaller markings. And in the center was a face, a woman's face. Nia's breath hitched. She knew those eyes. She knew that nose, that mouth. It was her mother. She stumbled forward, hands shaking. "Mama!" The symbol beneath the face began to glow. Words, ancient, soft, melodic, whispered through the shrine. Kofi frowned. "What language is that?" Amara shook her head. "I've never heard anything like it." But Nia understood it. It wasn't language. It was memory. Suddenly, the shrine filled with visions, faint, ghost-like images swirling into shape. Nia saw her mother standing here years ago, placing her own stone into the shrine. She saw her mother kneel before the altar as rain poured down inside the shrine, but nowhere else. She saw her mother whispering to the sky, begging for something or someone to be saved. The visions collapsed into shadow. Nia staggered, grabbing the altar for support. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "My mother was part of this," she whispered. "She belonged to this shrine." Kofi stepped closer. "Then what does that make you?" Nia turned toward them, face pale, eyes shining with fear and clarity. "I think," she said breathlessly, "I am the one the sky listens to now." The shrine fell silent again. But something had changed. Something ancient had awakened, and Nia felt it pulsing inside her chest like a second heartbeat. She wasn't just digging into her past. Her past had risen to claim her. "If you want, I can continue immediately with." The walk back to the village felt different. The forest that had seemed mysterious now felt watchful. Every leaf, every branch, every shadow seemed to react to Nia's presence, as if the shrine had marked her, awakened something in her that the world around them could sense. Nia kept her hand pressed to her chest. The second heartbeat, the strange pulse, throbbed faintly beneath her skin. It wasn't painful. It wasn't loud. But it was there, alive. Amara kept glancing at her worriedly. "Are you sure you're okay?" Nia nodded, though her voice was thin. I don't know what's happening to me." Kofi walked ahead in silence, gripping his spear tightly. His steps were sharp, controlled, tense. He didn't look back at Nia the way he did before. Now he watched her from the corner of his eye, studying her like someone studying a storm cloud, deciding whether to move closer or run. When the village came into view, the air buzzed with noise. Crowds, voices, tension. People stood outside their huts, whispering loudly, pointing at the forest. Some children clung to their mothers. Some elders held prayer beads. Every face carried the same expression, fear, and all their fear was directed toward Nia. The accusation. Chief Kato stood before them, surrounded by elders. His face was lined with worry, not anger, but the crowd around him fueled the fire. As soon as Nia stepped into the open space, the villagers erupted. She brought the wet soil. She disturbed the shrine. She called something from the sky. She is cursed. She is dangerous. The noise rose like a storm. Nia flinched. Her heart hammered. The second heartbeat pulsed harder, responding to her fear like it understood her pain. Chief Kato raised his staff, calling for silence. "Let her come forward." Amara squeezed Nia's hand, refusing to let go. "We're with you." Kofi stood on her other side, but his grip on his spear tightened even more. The chief studied his son, noticing the tension. "Kofi," the chief said slowly, "what happened at the shrine?" Kofi took a breath. His voice was steady, but his eyes remained locked on Nia. "We found an engraving that looked like her mother. We found symbols that matched her stone, and something reacted to her presence." A loud murmur spread. Some stepped back, as though distance alone could protect them. The chief turned to Nia. "Child, what did you see?" Nia swallowed, forcing her shaking voice to stay steady. "I saw my mother, or her memory. The shrine showed things I didn't know, things she hid." "Why would your mother hide this?" one elder demanded. Nia shook her head, tears gathering. "I don't know." But another elder stepped forward. Elder Kemi, the oldest and sharpest among them. Her voice cut the air like a blade. "Your mother was one of the sky callers." The crowd gasped. Chief Kato looked stunned. "Elder, those are old stories. Legends." "They were never legends. Elder Kemi said. Only hidden. She turned toward Nia, eyes filled with ancient sorrow. A sky caller is bound to the heavens. When they cry, the clouds hear. When they fear, the ground responds. When they call, the sky answers. The villagers stepped back even more quickly now. Nia's breath caught. Why me? I didn't ask for this. You were born into it, the elders said gently. Your mother escaped the shrine years ago. She tried to leave the calling behind. But the sky never forgets its own. Nia's knees went weak. Amara wrapped an arm around her to steady her. Kofi, still tense, finally spoke. Elder, is she dangerous? The question sliced through Nia's heart. But Elder Kemi answered calmly. Only if she loses control. A sky caller's emotions guide their power. That's the problem, a villager shouted. She's scared. She's confused. She will bring storms. She will curse us. The second heartbeat inside Nia pounded at the voices, fast, agitated. Nia pressed a hand to her chest, wincing. Please stop shouting. But they didn't. Their fear fueled each other. Some men grabbed sticks. Some women pulled their children behind them. The crowd began moving forward like a single creature, terrified, angry, ready to strike first. Amara stepped in front of Nia, arms wide. Don't touch her. Kofi also stepped forward, blocking part of the crowd. Stop. No one attacks in fear. But the crowd was too heated, too afraid, too loud. Nia felt her chest burn. The second heartbeat throbbed wildly, matching the storm inside her rising panic. Please, she whispered. Please stop. Elder Kemi raised her voice. Everyone stay calm. She is awakening. If you push her. But it was too late. A man from the crowd lunged toward Nia with a stick raised high. And Nia screamed. Not in words, not in sound, but in power. The wind exploded outward in a violent burst. Dust lifted off the ground. Clothing whipped wildly. People were thrown backward into the dirt, crying out in shock. Thunder cracked in the sky, though the clouds were clear. The earth beneath Nia's feet trembled. Leaves spiraled upward in a whirlwind around her. When the wind calmed, villagers lay stunned on the ground. The space around Nia was empty. No one had dared stand close. Nia stared at her shaking hands, horrified. I didn't mean to. I didn't want to hurt anyone. Chief Kato raised himself from the ground, panting. Elder, she cannot stay in the village like this. The crowd murmured agreement. Nia's heart broke. Please, I don't want to be alone. Elder Kemi shook her head. You must learn control, and you cannot do it here. Kofi looked at her, conflict burning in his eyes. There is only one place powerful enough to train her. Nia already knew the answer. The shrine, she whispered. Elder Kemi nodded. At sunrise, you must return, or your power will tear you apart and everything around you. Nia looked at the village, at the frightened faces, at the people who had almost attacked her, at the people she could have hurt. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She whispered, I never asked for this. But the second heartbeat throbbed in her chest, as if reminding her, destiny is rarely asked for. It simply arrives. Night came heavy and silent, like the world was holding its breath. Amina sat beside Kato in their bedroom, watching him pace back and forth. His steps were uneven. His breathing was sharp, almost painful. And every few seconds, he pressed a shaking hand to his chest as if fighting something inside. The room, once their peaceful home, now felt like a place waiting for something terrible to happen. Kato, please sit, Amina whispered gently. He didn't. He couldn't. His eyes were red and tired, full of fear he tried so hard to hide. Amina, I'm fine. I just need time. But they both knew that wasn't true. The second heartbeat had been growing louder all evening, soft at first, then steady, then pounding like a drum echoing through the walls. Amina could almost feel it from across the room, like the air itself pulsed with it. Kato stumbled, one hand gripping the edge of the table to stay upright. Amina rushed forward. You're hurting. Let me help. No. His voice cracked, more from fear than anger. He turned his face away, shoulders shaking. Amina, don't touch me. Not now. It's stronger when you're close. Amina's heart twisted. She could hear the tremor in his voice, the way he fought not just pain but the terror of losing himself. "Kato," she whispered, stepping toward him anyway. "You don't have to face this alone." He closed his eyes, exhausted. "But I do. If I lose control, I don't know what it will do to you." That fear stabbed through her, but she refused to step away. "I'm your wife. I don't leave when things get hard." The drum-like heartbeat shook through the room, louder than before. Kato gasped and fell to his knees. His back arched, muscles tightening under his shirt. His breath came in short, panicked bursts. Amina froze. This wasn't normal pain. This was something fighting to be born. "Kato," she cried, falling beside him. "Talk to me. Stay with me." He didn't answer. His eyes were open but unfocused, the warmth she loved fading from them. Slowly, something colder, deeper, older began creeping into his expression. The ancestor spirit. The presence Baresa had warned her about. Kato's body stiffened, and his hands dug into the floorboards. The veins on his neck pulsed like they carried a second rhythm. When he lifted his head, his posture wasn't his own. It was sharper, stronger, almost regal. Amina felt the hairs on her arms rise. "Kato, can you hear me?" His lips moved, but no words came. Instead, his body shifted with small, deliberate motions, motions that didn't belong to him. A tilt of the head, a tightening of the jaw, a steady, heavy breath that sounded too controlled. The ancestor spirit was taking shape through him. The air cooled around Amina. Her heart pounded. "Please don't leave me. Fight it." Kato's body jerked violently, and his hands slammed to the ground to hold himself up. His chest heaved, the double heartbeat now shaking through him like rolling thunder. Then he looked at her, not with Kato's soft, loving eyes, but with eyes full of old fear, old memories, old instincts, something ancient rising through him. The spirit recognized her, and it didn't like what it saw. Amina stepped back, but only for a moment. The spirit's posture shifted, defensive, like it believed she threatened Kato instead of loving him. "No," she whispered through tears. "I'm not your enemy. I'm here to help." The heartbeat pounded harder, louder, faster. Kato's body trembled between two worlds, one fighting to stay, one trying to take over. Amina crawled to him, tears streaming. "Kato, listen to me. Come back. I'm right here." She reached out and placed a shaking hand gently on his chest. The effect was immediate. The heartbeat went wild, roaring like a drum caught in a storm, then dropping suddenly, then rising again with violent force. Kato's back arched, his mouth opened in a silent cry of agony. "Amina," he managed, breathless, voice breaking. "Run." "I won't." She held onto his shirt, refusing to let go even as her hand shook. "I'm not losing you." The heartbeat surged one last time, so loud it vibrated through the room. Then Kato collapsed forward, catching himself on his hands, shaking uncontrollably. Amina held him close, her tears falling on his back, whispering steady words, even as fear crushed her chest. Love was supposed to heal, but tonight, love wasn't enough. And deep inside Kato, the ancestor spirit finally woke. The moon hovered above the village like a silent witness, its pale glow spilling across the courtyard where Amina now stood barefoot on the cool earth. Dr. Kato had guided her here, his lantern swaying gently in the night breeze. The whispers of tall grass brushed against each other, creating a soft hiss that made the moment feel even more sacred and frightening. "This is where we perform the ritual of truth," Dr. Kato said, pointing to a circular space marked with ashes, herbs, and carved wooden tokens. "It will show us whether Ao is haunted by coincidence or by something darker." Amina swallowed hard. She had spent the past day running between confusion, fear, and a strange determination that refused to die. She needed answers. She needed to know why a man she had never met seemed to know her mother. Why her mother's voice kept echoing in her memory, like a tune waiting to be completed. Why her life suddenly felt tied to a stranger's footsteps. "Will it hurt him?" she asked quietly. Dr. Kato didn't respond immediately. He rubbed a dark mixture of herbs between his palms, letting the powder fall into the fire pit at the center of the circle. Flames leapt upward with a sharp hiss, casting dancing shadows across the yard. The truth, he finally said, hurts everyone involved. But the ritual itself will not harm him. Amina nodded, though her gut twisted. Ao sat on the opposite side of the circle, his hands tied only as a precaution. Not because he resisted, but because he insisted. If this is the only way to clear what she thinks I've done, he had said earlier, looking at Amina with calm, steady eyes, then Timey. I have nothing to hide. But now, sitting in the firelight, sweat glistening on his forehead, he looked far less certain. Dr. Kato motioned for Amina to kneel. She stepped into the circle slowly, feeling a strange pulse vibrate beneath her feet, as if the earth itself was waking up. Amina, Dr. Kato said, placing a hand on her shoulder, the ritual requires honesty from you as well. The spirits of truth respond to both sides. If you hide anything, the ritual will blur. She stiffened. Hide? What'd I hide? The doctor studied her face. Fear, doubt, or the pieces of your mother's story that you've tried to forget. Amina blinked, memories flashing like broken shards. Her mother crying at night. Her mother holding a ring she never explained. Her mother whispering, "Some truths come to find you when you're ready." She closed her eyes and exhaled. "I'm ready," she whispered. Dr. Kato began chanting, low, rhythmic, vibrating through the air like a drumbeat. The fire flared higher. Sparks shot upward and hung for a moment before falling like fireflies. Ao flinched. Amina saw him tense, pulling at the rope around his wrists. His shadow stretched unnaturally long behind him, flickering like something alive. The air grew heavy, thick, charged. Suddenly, the ground beneath the circle trembled. Amina gasped as a faint shape formed in the smoke. A woman's silhouette, delicate, familiar. Her breath caught in her throat. "Mama," she whispered. The smoke figure didn't speak, but its arm lifted, pointing directly at Ao. Ao's eyes widened in horror. "Amina," he choked out, voice shaking. "I swear, I didn't hurt her. I didn't even know." But the smoke shifted again, this time swirling into a different image. A younger Ao, standing beside Amina's mother, holding a small baby wrapped in cloth. Amina's heart slammed against her ribs. She stumbled backward, shaking her head. No, that can't be." Ao stared at the vision, confused, horrified, struggling to understand it himself. "What does this mean?" Amina cried, turning to Dr. Kato. The doctor's face had drained of color. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "It means the truth is not what you feared." He looked at Ao, then at Amina. "It is what you never imagined." The dawn that rose over the village felt different, gentler, warmer, as if the sky itself wanted to soothe everything the night had shaken loose. Soft rays of sunlight slipped through the leaves, touching Amina's skin with a quiet promise. The darkness was lifting. Amina sat on the wooden bench outside Dr. Kato's house, her hands clasped tightly together. She was still processing the truth the ritual had revealed. Ao wasn't a threat. He was part of her past. Her mother had known him, trusted him, and the baby wrapped in cloth. Amina, that image alone had shifted the entire weight of her heart. Ao stepped outside slowly. He looked exhausted but lighter, as if he had finally stopped running from memories he didn't know were chasing him. "Amina," he said gently, stopping in front of her. "I wish I had answers for everything we saw. I didn't know your mother back then. I didn't know I ever crossed her path. I didn't know you." "But you did," Amina replied, lifting her eyes to meet his. "Maybe not with your mind, but with your life. Our stories brushed against each other long before today." Ao's expression softened. The fear between them had dissolved, replaced by something fragile and almost tender. He sat beside her, the bench creaking under their weight. "Your mother," he said quietly. "She wasn't showing us pain." I felt no accusation in that vision. Amina nodded. She was showing connection, a thread we didn't know existed. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't a heavy one. It felt like two hearts breathing in sync, learning again, adjusting to the possibility of trust. "Amina," Ao whispered, "I don't expect you to suddenly accept me, but I want to stay. Not because of the ritual, but because of you. Because I want to understand the bond your mother showed us. Amina's chest warmed with a feeling she wasn't ready to name, but it felt right. And I want to understand it too, she admitted. Not as fear, not as suspicion, as possibility. Ao smiled, small, genuine, hopeful. From inside the house, Dr. Kato watched through the window, his old face breaking into a knowing grin. Two hearts, he murmured to himself, finding each other in the ashes of truth. Amina stood and extended a hand to Ao. For the first time, he took it without hesitation. Together, they stepped off the veranda, walking into the morning light. Not as strangers haunted by shadows, but as two lives cautiously, beautifully intertwining into a new beginning.